Turn on the news today and you'll hear the exact same economic diagnosis repeated on almost every channel. Inflation is spiking because of the recent conflict in the Middle East. It is a clean, simple story with an obvious cause and a direct effect. But the timeline here makes zero sense. This chart tracks the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, or PCE, over the last 5 years. This is the Federal Reserve's official scoreboard for inflation, targeting exactly 2%. The recent escalation in the Middle East started just 5 months ago, but as you can see, this official measure of inflation has missed its target for 63 months in a row. This single metric dictates the terms for every financial decision you will make. It sets the interest rate on your mortgage, the cost of your car loan, the yield on your savings account, and what the cash in your wallet will actually buy you next year. A 5-month-old geopolitical headline is being used to diagnose a 5-year-old structural disease. For decades, inflation in the United States moved like a pendulum, reliably swinging back down to that 2% target. From roughly 1985 to 2007, America experienced the Great Moderation, where growth was steady and an entire generation took low inflation for granted. To understand why that stability is breaking down today, we rewind to the late 1970s. Inflation was sprinting past 13%, doubling prices every 8 years. Paul Volcker took over as Fed chair in 1979 and did the one thing no politician had the stomach for. He deliberately broke the economy. Volcker jacked the Federal Reserve's benchmark interest rate to 20%. He intentionally triggered 2 brutal back-to-back recessions, completely strangling the money supply until inflation ran out of oxygen. It was a painful reset, but it worked. If inflation remains stuck above 4% today, why doesn't Jerome Powell run the exact same playbook and jack rates to 12% to reset it? One variable has changed since the 1970s. When Volcker raised rates, the national debt was roughly 25% of GDP. Today, the U.S. is carrying over $34 trillion, well over 100% of the entire economy's output. This massive debt load turns the traditional cure for inflation into a poison. Raising interest rates in a high-debt environment is like pressing down on 2 pedals at the exact same time. Pressing the brake works as intended. Higher rates make borrowing expensive, slowing down private spending and cooling the economy. But higher rates also press a hidden accelerator pedal. The government must pay significantly more interest on the trillions it owes. That interest bill is now running at over $1 trillion a year. Those interest payments are paid directly to pension funds, to commercial banks, and private investors. They act as a massive stimulus, injecting fresh cash right back into the financial system. In 1980, that gas pedal was barely felt, but at 120% debt to GDP today, both pedals are floored, and the car is shaking itself apart. When the national debt is this high, the Federal Reserve's attempt to fight inflation mathematically fuels the exact crisis it is trying to solve. In 1981, economists Thomas Sargent and Neil Wallace published a proof of this trap titled Some Unpleasant Monetarist Arithmetic. They proved that if a government persistently runs fiscal deficits, the central bank eventually loses its power to stop inflation. Keeping rates high causes the debt to compound until bond buyers vanish. To prevent a sovereign default, the central bank is forced to turn on the digital printing presses and buy the debt itself. This chart shows the M2 money supply, the primary fuel source for inflation. After the massive spike in 2020 and a slight dip in 2022, the trend has recently reversed. Late last year, the Fed hit a wall with its attempt to drain the system. Without a grand announcement, they turned the printer back on, and the money supply is now accelerating at its fastest pace in years. Monetary policy has surrendered to fiscal dominance. The Fed is printing money because the math leaves them no other choice. Small dips in headline reports provide a convenient political distraction, but the structural reality running underneath the economy is far more severe. Annual federal deficits are running near 6% of the total economy, pushing the national debt toward $40 trillion. Net interest payments on that ballooning debt now cost far more than the entire U.S. military defense budget combined. A system structurally engineered to spend itself into debasement is crushing the American economy. This catastrophic math persists in Washington because it serves a specific political purpose. Deficit spending is a tool designed to win elections. Politicians win by promising new stimulus, tax cuts, and programs. They'd borrow the difference today and punt the consequences to the next administration. Warren Buffett once suggested a fix: pass a law that says if the deficit exceeds 3% of GDP, all sitting members of Congress are ineligible for re-election. He knew that changing the incentives would instantly change the math. A perfectly functioning political incentives machine is mathematically guaranteed to break the currency.